I've started doing. Well, I've been faffing far too long over a history of the Arsenal United rivalry, but I've put some of the genesis of it on there. So the period it starts kind of. I know people often talk about the brawl in 1990, but actually, I think I would argue it goes back to 1983, the two cup semi-finals, and particularly a challenge by Remy Moses and David O'Leary. I think if you have to pinpoint one moment, that is when it starts, and it kind of peaks at times, and then it bubbles along, and there's always an edge, and then obviously when Arsene Wenger arrives, it becomes the greatest rivalry I've ever seen, and one I could kind of bathe in for the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Remy Moses, David O'Leary appeared on with Gary Neville on his podcast.
Yeah, I was hoping he'd talk about it, but he didn't, sadly.
There's so many things David O'Leary could talk about. I actually, we were just talking about tennis before we went live. I actually did bump into, again, as a slight exaggeration, but David O'Leary at Wimbledon a few years ago and had a picture with him as well. Thoroughly nice guy. But Remy Moses, the only thing I've heard of from Remy in the last 5 or 10 years was fake news about his
that's right, which I disgracefully texted to my brother, who was a bit older than me, so would have grown up more in that era, and I felt so fucking bad when I realized.
Well, thank God it was just a text, Rob, and not
I know
a story.
Yeah, normally I'm so suspicious of stuff like that, and but anyway, yeah, exactly. That's I know he obviously lives a very private life.
Yes, exactly.
I did actually. I managed to get in touch with his son to see if he might do an interview, and he said basically, very politely said, "Don't bother." So that's fair enough. It's an interesting story. It's like the short story is he didn't do much wrong with O'Leary, but O'Leary got a broken ankle, and anyway, United beat them in both semi-finals and kind of bullied them. But then there's a league game at Highbury, an irrelevant league game, starting May '83. Only 23,000 were there, but Arsenal basically wanted revenge, particularly on Moses, because although he hadn't done that much to O'Leary, he'd kind of put it about in the 3 games. And there's no footage, but by common consensus, they got him sent off, and that meant he missed the cup final, which obviously in those days was absolutely huge. Everyone remembers Steve Foster missing the first leg, and of course Remy Moses was really young then. He said, "Well, he'll get another go," but he didn't, because in '85 he was injured, and by then he was starting to struggle with a problem that ended his career really early. People forget what a very good player he was. Actually, I think he's one of the great players in United's history. But yeah, that's the kind of story. It was a huge thing at the time. I think. Yeah, Don Howe and Ron Atkinson had a huge row and was threatening to sue and things. Don Howe was threatening to sue and things like that. So it was a big thing at the time, but it's all. Was
Remy Moses Manchester United's first black player to score for the club at least? I don't know if he was the first black player to play.
I should know that. I think he might have been. So he came with Robson, obviously, in '81.
Yeah.
And
his first play, it says, I've got here, made his United debut on the 19th of September 1981 against Swansea, scored his first goal in the same season, and in doing so became the first black player to score for the club. So that would suggest maybe not the first one to play, but certainly the first to score. But yeah, I mean, those stories about his passing, I think they might even have made a couple of mainstream media websites as well.
I would never do that, but I felt so shit. I would text my brother saying, "Don't worry, false alarm." I think it was around the time someone else had actually died. And it was,
there was
I forget what it was.
I tell you what,
kind of like, oh shit, we've lost 2 kind of greats, that kind of thing.
I tell you what was run by a lot of people, and it wasn't true, but it became true 24 hours later. Was the agent of Ibrahimovic, Italian?
Oh, Raiola.
Yeah, Raiola. So his death was announced and people were like, "No, he's not," and his family, I think, were like, "No, he's not well, but he's really okay." Good. And then he did pass away like a few hours or maybe 24 hours later.